My name is Amanda, 28 years old, and I always thought my wedding day would be the happiest day of my life, surrounded by the family I adored. For months, my parents and sister kept hinting at some special surprise they were planning. "Just wait, Amanda," they'd say with secretive smiles. I never imagined their surprise would be an empty row of seats where they should have been, or that the only message I'd receive on my wedding day would be a video of them enjoying Europe without me. Before I share my heartbreaking story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if family betrayal stories resonate with you. I've always been the responsible one in my family. As a dedicated nurse at Memorial Hospital, I spent my days caring for others, a trait that naturally extended to my personal life. My parents, Susan and Robert, raised me to believe that family comes first, always. I took that lesson to heart, perhaps more than they ever did themselves. I met Nathan 3 years ago at a hospital fundraiser. He was there representing his law firm, which was one of the event's sponsors. I was working the event, making sure everything ran smoothly for the hospital administration. Our eyes met across the crowded ballroom, and the connection was immediate. He later told me he'd spent 20 minutes working up the courage to come talk to me, afraid I'd think he was just another lawyer with a line. Instead, we ended up talking until the event staff began breaking down tables around us. Nathan was different from anyone I'd dated before. He was thoughtful, stable, and genuinely interested in my life and work. After 6 months of dating, I introduced him to my family, holding my breath and hoping they would love him as much as I was beginning to. My family dynamic had always been close, if sometimes complicated. My younger sister Hazel and I had the usual sibling rivalry growing up, but as adults, we'd become friends. She was the creative one, working as a graphic designer and always full of exciting stories about her clients and projects. I admired her free spirit and artistic talent, while she claimed to admire my stability and compassion. When Hazel met Nathan, they hit it off immediately, bonding over a shared love of obscure indie films that left me completely confused. My parents were equally enthusiastic about Nathan. My mom, Susan, a high school English teacher, appreciated his articulate nature and the way he could discuss her favorite novels. My dad, Robert, who ran a moderately successful construction company, was impressed by Nathan's knowledge of local real estate development and his down-to-earth approach despite his education. They welcomed him into our weekly Sunday dinners, and he quickly became part of our family traditions. When Nathan proposed on our 2nd anniversary, during a sunrise hike to our favorite overlook point, I couldn't wait to tell my family. I still remember rushing to my parents' house that evening, ring glittering on my finger, and the way my mother cried happy tears while my father shook Nathan's hand with genuine pride. Hazel squealed and immediately started talking about dress designs and color schemes. "I call dibs on maid of honor," she announced, hugging me tightly. "This is going to be the best wedding ever, I promise." I had always dreamed of a wedding where both families would come together. Nathan's parents, Eleanor and William, were more reserved than my boisterous family. They lived in the next state over and had raised Nathan with a focus on education and independence. When we visited them to share our engagement news, their congratulations were sincere but measured, with promises of support but a clear message that they respected our autonomy to plan the wedding we wanted. "Whatever you both decide will be lovely," Eleanor had said, patting my hand. "We're just happy to welcome you to the family, Amanda." The contrast between our families was stark but not unpleasant. I looked forward to bringing these different energies together at our wedding, creating a new combined family that would carry forward with both traditions. I envisioned my dad walking me down the aisle, my mom helping me into my dress, and Hazel standing beside me as I took my vows. These weren't just daydreams, they were expectations I never questioned would come true. In those early days of engagement bliss, I had no reason to doubt my family's commitment to my special day. They seemed as invested as I was, with my mother already collecting magazine clippings of flower arrangements and my father talking about saving for his contribution to the wedding. Hazel immediately created a wedding planning board online and shared it with me, filling it with gorgeous venue ideas and dress styles she thought would suit me. "This is going to be the most important day of your life," my mother said during one early planning session at their kitchen table. "And we want everything to be perfect for you, sweetheart." I believed her. I believed all of them. I had no idea that these promises were the beginning of what would become the most painful betrayal of my life. The wedding planning began with enthusiasm from everyone involved. We set a date for June 15th, giving us just over a year to prepare. I created detailed planning spreadsheets, while Hazel put her design skills to work on save-the-date cards and wedding invitations. My mother volunteered to research venues, and my father promised to handle negotiations with vendors to make sure we weren't being overcharged. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. The first sign that something was off came about 2 months into the planning process. My mother and I had scheduled an appointment to tour 3 potential venues on a Saturday morning. I arrived at the first location, a beautiful converted barn with fairy lights strung across exposed wooden beams, and waited in the parking lot for her to arrive. After 15 minutes, I called her cell phone. "Oh, Amanda, I'm so sorry," she said, sounding distracted. "Something came up with one of my students. An emergency parent conference. I completely forgot to call you." It was unusual for my mother to forget anything, especially something related to family, but I brushed it off. Everyone has moments of forgetfulness, I reasoned. I toured the venues alone, sending her pictures and trying not to feel disappointed. A week later, Hazel missed our appointment with the florist. Her text came just as I was parking at the shop. "So sorry, sis. Client emergency. Can't make it. Trust your judgment." Again, I told myself it was nothing to worry about. Hazel was building her freelance business, and client emergencies happened. I selected some potential flower arrangements and moved on. Then my father called to cancel our meeting with the caterer, citing an unexpected issue at a construction site. 3 cancellations in 3 weeks seemed like more than coincidence, but when I brought it up during Sunday dinner, everyone had perfectly reasonable explanations. "Wedding planning is a long process," my mother said soothingly. "There will be plenty of other appointments we can make." It was around this time that they first mentioned the surprise. "Don't worry about the wedding favors," my mother said when I brought up my ideas for personalized gift bags. "Your father and I have a special surprise planned for that." "What kind of surprise?" I asked, naturally curious. My parents exchanged glances across the dinner table. "If we told you, it wouldn't be a surprise," my father said with a wink. "Just trust us. It's going to be special." Hazel nodded enthusiastically. "The surprise is going to be amazing, Amanda. Just wait and see." I was touched by their secretiveness, assuming they were planning something meaningful for our guests. Perhaps personalized gifts that reflected my and Nathan's relationship, or something that incorporated our shared love of travel and adventure. Whatever it was, their excitement made me feel loved and prioritized. As the weeks passed, however, their involvement in the planning process became increasingly sporadic. My mother stopped asking about dress shopping. My father changed the subject whenever I brought up wedding costs. Hazel began missing our weekly planning lunches, always with last-minute excuses that seemed plausible on their own, but formed a pattern when viewed together. Nathan was the first to voice concern. "Don't you think it's weird that your family keeps backing out of wedding stuff?" he asked one evening as we were reviewing our budget at our kitchen table. "They're busy." I defended immediately. "Mom has her students, Dad has the business, and Hazel's freelance work is really taking off." Nathan gave me a skeptical look. "My parents live 3 hours away, and they've made it to every appointment they've committed to. Your family is right here in town." "They're planning a surprise," I reminded him, feeling a flicker of unease that I quickly suppressed. "Maybe that's taking up their time." Nathan dropped the subject, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. And if I'm being honest, I was beginning to harbor doubts myself. I just couldn't bear to acknowledge them. My anxiety grew when my mother canceled our dress shopping appointment, the 3rd rescheduling in a month. I'd been looking forward to the traditional mother-daughter moment of finding my perfect wedding dress, perhaps tearing up together when I found the one. Instead, I ended up going with Nathan's mother Eleanor, who happened to be in town for a weekend visit. She was kind and supportive, but it wasn't the same. I'm sure your mother had a good reason, Eleanor said gently as I tried on the fifth dress of the day. But I'm honored to be here with you, Amanda. When I found my dress, a stunning A-line with delicate lace detailing and a sweetheart neckline, Eleanor was the one who teared up and helped me make the decision. She even insisted on contributing to the cost, saying it was her privilege as a future mother-in-law. Her kindness only highlighted my own mother's absence. When I brought the dress up at the next family dinner, showing them pictures on my phone, my mother's reaction was subdued. "It's beautiful, honey," she said, glancing at the photos briefly. "Eleanor has good taste." "I wish you had been there," I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. "I know, and I'm sorry. But remember, we're working on your surprise," she replied, exchanging another of those meaningful looks with my father and sister. "It's going to make up for everything." By this point, the mysterious surprise had been mentioned dozens of times, becoming a catch-all explanation for their lackluster participation in my wedding planning. Still, I clung to the belief that they were planning something truly special, something that would make all these disappointments worthwhile in the end. I continued making excuses for them to Nathan, to his parents, and worst of all, to myself. When my mother missed the menu tasting, when my father was too busy to discuss the seating chart, when Hazel was consistently unavailable for bridesmaid dress fittings, I smiled and pretended everything was fine. The surprise had become a talisman I clutched to ward off the growing fear that something was seriously wrong. 2 months before the wedding, the situation with my family had deteriorated from occasional absences to near-complete disengagement. My mother stopped asking about wedding details altogether. My father changed the subject whenever costs came up, despite his earlier promises to contribute. Hazel became increasingly difficult to reach, often going days without responding to my texts about bridesmaid responsibilities. The turning point came when I stopped by my parents' house unexpectedly one afternoon. I'd been in the neighborhood for a cake tasting alone again and thought I'd surprise my mother with samples from the bakery. When I walked in using my key, I found her at the dining room table with a stack of paperwork that she hurriedly gathered up when she saw me. "Amanda, I wasn't expecting you," she said, her voice pitched slightly higher than normal. "I brought cake samples," I said, holding up the small box from the bakery. "What are you working on?" "Just some school paperwork," she said dismissively. "How was the tasting?" I set down the cake box and gestured to the papers she'd stacked. "Since when do you need passport applications for school?" Because that's what I'd glimpsed, passport renewal forms for her and my father, and what looked like a new application for Hazel, who had never traveled internationally before. My mother's face flushed. "Oh, these? We're just getting everything in order. You never know when you might need a passport. Are you planning a trip?" I asked directly. "Nothing definite," she said, avoiding my eyes. "Just being prepared." That evening, I confronted all 3 of them during our increasingly rare family dinner. "Are you planning a trip around the time of my wedding? Is that why you've all been so absent from the planning?" "Of course not," my father said firmly. "We wouldn't miss your wedding for anything in the world, Amanda." "Don't be ridiculous. Then why are you all applying for passports? Why is Hazel getting her first passport 2 months before my wedding?" Hazel looked uncomfortable. "It's not what you think, Mandy. It's related to the surprise." "What surprise could possibly require all of you to have passports?" I demanded, my voice rising with frustration. "Amanda," my mother said soothingly, "you need to trust us. Everything we're doing is for you, for your wedding. The surprise will make sense when the time is right." I wanted desperately to believe them, but doubt had taken root and was growing rapidly. Still, I nodded and pretended to accept their explanation. What choice did I have? They were my family. And the alternative, that they were planning something that didn't include me on my wedding day, was too painful to consider. A week later, I was helping my mother look for a specific cookbook in their kitchen when I found a stack of travel brochures hidden in a drawer. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, all with notes in my mother's handwriting. Dates circled, accommodations starred. The dates overlapped with my wedding week. My hands shook as I confronted her, holding up the brochures like evidence at a trial. You're planning a European trip during my wedding. Amanda, you're jumping to conclusions, she said, taking the brochures from my hands. These are just possibilities, research. Nothing is booked. Stop lying to me, I shouted, my composure finally breaking. You've all been distant for months. You've missed every important wedding planning event. And now I find out you're planning to be in Europe when I'm getting married. My mother's expression hardened, then softened into something like pity. The surprise is going to be worth it, Amanda. You need to trust the process. I left their house in tears, calling my best friend Stephanie from the car. She had been maid of honor before my sister claimed the role, and had graciously stepped back to bridesmaid status without complaint. Now she listened as I sobbed out my fears and suspicions. Something is seriously wrong, Steph. I think they're planning to skip my wedding for a European vacation. That's insane, Stephanie said firmly. No parents would miss their daughter's wedding for a vacation. There has to be another explanation. Then why won't they tell me what's going on? Why all the secrecy and missed appointments? Stephanie didn't have an answer, but she promised to come over with wine and a sympathetic ear. That night, as we sat on my couch analyzing every interaction I'd had with my family over the past months, I finally admitted the fear that had been growing inside me. I think they don't approve of the wedding. Maybe they don't like Nathan as much as they pretended to. That's not it, Stephanie assured me. I've seen them with Nathan. They adore him. Then what's going on? Why are they acting like my wedding is an inconvenience they're trying to avoid? Again. Stephanie had no answers, only comfort and solidarity. As the weeks continued, the pattern persisted. My family became experts at vague reassurances and changing the subject. The mysterious surprise grew to mythic proportions in their references, always cited as the reason they couldn't participate in normal wedding activities. Meanwhile, Nathan's family stepped up in ways I hadn't expected. His mother Eleanor took over many of the tasks my mother had abandoned. She helped me finalize the floral arrangements, consulted on menu options, and even hosted my bridal shower when Hazel claimed she was too overwhelmed with work to plan it. His father William had long discussions with me about music selections and photography options, stepping into the role my own father had vacated. We're happy to help, Eleanor told me when I thanked her tearfully after the bridal shower. We already think of you as a daughter, Amanda. 1 week before the wedding, I made one final attempt to understand what was happening with my family. I invited them all to dinner at Nathan's and my apartment, hoping that seeing our home and our life together might remind them of the importance of the commitment we were making. During dessert, I addressed the elephant in the room. The wedding is next Saturday. I need to know if you're going to be there, really be there for me. Of course we will, sweetheart, my mother said, patting my hand. We wouldn't miss it for the world. Then why have you missed everything leading up to it? Why haven't you been involved in any of the planning? Why do I feel like you're all hiding something from me? My father cleared his throat. Amanda, we've told you repeatedly about the surprise. We've been putting a lot of effort into making it special. That's why we might seem distracted. Is the surprise more important than being there for dress fittings, tastings, and all the other moments that matter to me? I asked, my voice breaking. Hazel jumped in. The surprise is going to make up for all of that, Mandy. Just wait and see. It's going to be amazing. I looked at each of their faces, searching for sincerity, for the family I thought I knew. I don't want a surprise. I want my family present and accounted for on my wedding day. Can you promise me that? We promise, my mother said, and in that moment, I chose to believe her. I wanted so badly for it to be true. The next day, they all missed my final dress fitting. Eleanor held my hand as the seamstress made last-minute adjustments, and I blinked back tears that had nothing to do with the beauty of my wedding gown. June 15th dawned bright and clear, the kind of perfect early summer day that wedding planners dream about. I woke up in the hotel suite I'd booked for pre-wedding preparations, my stomach fluttering with a mixture of excitement and lingering anxiety. My mother and sister were supposed to arrive at 9 in the morning to help me get ready. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. 9 o'clock came and went. No sign of my mother or Hazel. At 9:30, I called my mother's cell phone. It went straight to voicemail. Mom, it's me. I'm in room 312 at the Westfield Hotel. Just checking to see when you and Hazel are arriving. Call me back. I tried to stay calm. Maybe they were running late. Maybe they were picking up something for the surprise. Maybe there was traffic. By 10 o'clock, with still no word, I called my father. Voicemail again. Dad, please call me. Mom and Hazel aren't here yet, and I'm starting to worry. At 10:30, Stephanie arrived, looking beautiful in her bridesmaid dress and carrying a bag of emergency supplies, extra makeup, bobby pins, double-sided tape for wardrobe malfunctions. No sign of them yet, she asked, setting down her bags. I shook my head, trying to keep my voice steady. No one is answering their phones. I've left messages everywhere. Stephanie's expression darkened, but she quickly forced a smile. I'm sure there's an explanation. Let's start your hair and makeup. They'll probably burst in any minute with apologies and some crazy story. By 11 o'clock, I was sitting in front of the mirror while Stephanie arranged my hair into an elegant updo. The other bridesmaids had arrived, creating a flurry of activity in the suite. But there was still no sign of my mother or sister. No one mentioned their absence directly, but I could see the concerned glances being exchanged behind my back. At 11:30, the wedding planner, a competent woman named Julia, knocked on the door. Amanda, do you have a minute? She asked, her professional smile not quite reaching her eyes. In the hallway, she lowered her voice. I've been in touch with the venue coordinator. There's been no sign of your family's arrival. The mother of the bride and maid of honor rooms are still vacant. Should we make any adjustments to the schedule? No, I said firmly, even as my heart raced with panic. The ceremony starts at 2 as planned. They'll be here. Julia nodded, unconvinced but unwilling to argue with the bride on her wedding day. We'll proceed as scheduled then. Back in the suite, I found a moment alone and tried calling my parents' home phone. After 4 rings, the answering machine picked up. This is the Taylor residence. We're currently unavailable as we're traveling in Europe. Please leave a message, and we'll return your call when we return. Europe. They were in Europe. On my wedding day, the room seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I grabbed the edge of the dresser to steady myself, my knuckles white with the effort of holding myself upright. They had gone to Europe. They had chosen a vacation over my wedding. The mysterious surprise had been a lie, a cover for their betrayal. A knock at the door interrupted my spiral of disbelief and pain. One of the hotel staff stood there with a package. Delivery for Amanda Taylor, he said, holding out a medium-sized box. I took it with trembling hands and carried it to the bed. The return address was my parents' home. Inside was a tablet with a note taped to the screen, "Play me." With the bridesmaids gathered around me, I pressed play on the preloaded video. My mother's face appeared, smiling broadly. Behind her was a view of the Eiffel Tower. Hi, sweetheart. Surprise. We're in Paris. The camera panned to show my father and Hazel, both waving enthusiastically. We decided to use the money we saved for the wedding on a European vacation instead, my mother continued cheerfully. We're hitting Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. 3 countries in 2 weeks. My father leaned into the frame. Now, we know what you're thinking, but you shouldn't be upset. You have Nathan now, and his family has been so involved with the wedding. You're starting your own family, and it's time for us to do something for ourselves for once. Hazel nodded enthusiastically. Yeah, Mandy, you're always so independent and strong. We knew you wouldn't really be hurt by this. You've got everything under control, like always. This is our surprise, my mother added. We've been planning this for months. That's why we couldn't make it to all those appointments. We were saving and planning for this trip. We'll want to hear all about the wedding when we get back, my father said. Have a beautiful day, sweetheart. We love you. The video ended with the 3 of them blowing kisses at the camera, the Eiffel Tower glittering behind them in the Parisian sunshine. The suite was dead silent. I stared at the black screen, unable to process what I had just witnessed. They hadn't just missed my wedding, they had planned to miss it. For months. While lying to my face about a non-existent surprise. Amanda? Stephanie's voice seemed to come from very far away. Amanda, say something. A strange calm settled over me. The kind that comes just before a devastating storm. They're in Europe. They used the wedding money for a vacation. Those absolute bastards, one of the bridesmaids whispered. Stephanie knelt in front of me, taking my hands in hers. Amanda, listen to me. This is unforgivable. What they've done is cruel and selfish beyond words. But today is still your wedding day. Nathan is still waiting to marry you. What do you want to do? What did I want to do? I wanted to scream. I wanted to curl into a ball and disappear. I wanted to call my parents and sister and demand to know how they could possibly think this was acceptable. I wanted to cancel everything and hide from the world. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Eleanor, Nathan's mother, stood there in her elegant blue dress, concern etched across her face. Amanda? Nathan sent me to check on you. No one's been able to reach your parents. Without a word, Stephanie handed her the tablet. Eleanor watched the video, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief to cold anger. Those selfish, heartless, she began, before taking a deep breath and composing herself. She set down the tablet and came to sit beside me on the bed, taking my hand in hers. Amanda, I can't begin to imagine how you're feeling right now. What they've done is unconscionable. But I want you to know something. She turned my face gently toward hers. William and I are here. We're not going anywhere. And if you want to continue with this wedding, we will stand with you every step of the way. Her kindness broke through the numbness, and the tears I'd been holding back flooded out. I sobbed against her shoulder while she held me, rocking gently as if I were a child. I don't know what to do. I admitted when I could speak again. How can I walk down the aisle alone? How can I get married when my own family didn't think it was important enough to attend? Eleanor wiped my tears with a gentle hand. You are not alone, Amanda. You have Nathan, who loves you more than anything in this world. You have me and William, who already think of you as our daughter. You have these wonderful friends who are standing by you. She gestured to the bridesmaids, all watching with tears in their eyes. And if you want, William would be honored to walk you down the aisle. I looked around the room at these people who had shown up for me, who had been there throughout the planning when my own family had not. And I thought of Nathan waiting for me, having no idea of the betrayal I had just experienced. I need to see Nathan, I said suddenly. But the tradition, one of the bridesmaids began. Screw tradition, I said, standing up. My family already threw tradition out the window when they flew to Paris instead of coming to my wedding. I need to see Nathan now. 20 minutes later, Nathan and I sat alone in a small room at the venue, his hands holding mine steady as I told him everything. I showed him the video, watched his expression darken with anger, and then soften with compassion as he pulled me into his arms. We can postpone, he offered immediately. We can wait, take some time for you to process this. I shook my head against his chest. No, I don't want to give them that power. I want to marry you today, Nathan. They might not think our wedding is important, but I do. I want to become your wife, with or without them here. Nathan studied my face, making sure I meant what I said. Then we'll get married today. And Amanda? We'll create our own family. One that would never, ever do something like this to someone they love. With that promise between us, I returned to the bridal suite to finish getting ready. My makeup had to be completely redone, but somehow I felt stronger. The pain was still there, a raw, gaping wound in my chest, but alongside it was a newfound resolve. I would not let my family's betrayal ruin this day. 2 o'clock approached with alarming speed. In the bridal waiting room, I stood in my wedding dress, veil arranged perfectly by Stephanie's careful hands. Eleanor had helped me with the final touches, pinning my grandmother's brooch to my bouquet as something old. Are you sure about this? Stephanie asked, straightening my train one last time. I'm sure, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I'm marrying Nathan today. The wedding planner Julia appeared at the door. It's time. Everyone is seated. She hesitated, then added, we've removed the reserved signs from the front row on the bride's side. The seats are filled with guests who love you. I nodded, grateful for her thoughtfulness. The idea of empty chairs where my family should have been was too painful to contemplate. William, Nathan's father, appeared in the doorway in his tuxedo, his kind face solemn. "Amanda," he said, "I want you to know that Eleanor and I are deeply honored to be here with you today. If you would allow me, I would be privileged to walk you down the aisle." The lump in my throat made it hard to speak. I merely nodded and took his offered arm. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. "And you are one of the strongest people I have ever met." The music began, the traditional wedding march that my mother and I had selected together months ago, before I knew she had no intention of being present to hear it. The doors to the ceremony space opened, and I saw the gathered guests turn to look at me. I saw their smiles, their happy faces, unaware of the betrayal that had occurred hours earlier. And then I saw Nathan, standing at the altar, his eyes finding mine immediately. In that moment, looking at the man I loved, I knew I was making the right decision. My family had chosen a vacation over my wedding, but I was choosing love and commitment over pain and anger. William squeezed my arm reassuringly as we began the walk down the aisle. Each step was difficult, my body heavy with the weight of my family's absence, but I kept my eyes on Nathan. His smile gave me strength. His steady gaze promised a future where I would be valued and loved. When we reached the altar, William placed my hand in Nathan's, then leaned in to kiss my cheek. "We're your family now," he whispered. "And we're not going anywhere." The ceremony proceeded as planned, though I barely registered the words being spoken. I said my vows in a clear voice, promising to love and cherish Nathan through all of life's challenges. When we were pronounced husband and wife, the applause from our guests seemed to lift some of the heaviness from my heart. At the reception, the head table had conspicuous gaps where my parents and sister should have been sitting. Eleanor and William moved their seats closer to mine, a subtle gesture of solidarity that brought tears to my eyes. When it came time for speeches, I held my breath, dreading the awkward moment when everyone would expect my father to toast the bride and groom. Instead, William stood, raising his glass. "When Nathan first told us about Amanda," he began, "we knew she was special. What we didn't realize then was how fortunate we would be to welcome her into our family. Amanda, you have shown extraordinary grace today under circumstances that would break many people. Nathan, you have chosen a partner with strength, compassion, and integrity. We couldn't be prouder to call you both our children." There wasn't a dry eye at the head table as he finished his toast. Nathan squeezed my hand under the table, and I leaned against his shoulder, drawing comfort from his solid presence. Throughout the evening, I fielded questions about my family's absence with vague references to a last-minute emergency. I couldn't bear to tell the truth, to admit that they had chosen a European vacation over my wedding day. The humiliation was too great. Stephanie and the other bridesmaids formed a protective circle around me, intercepting well-meaning but painful questions and steering conversations toward happier topics. Nathan's cousins, whom I had only met a few times before, went out of their way to include me in family photos, insisting that I was one of them now. By the time Nathan and I departed for our short honeymoon, a 4-day stay at a beachside resort a few hours away, I was emotionally exhausted. In the privacy of our hotel suite that night, I finally allowed myself to fully break down, sobbing in Nathan's arms until I had no tears left. How could they do this? I asked repeatedly. How could they think this was okay? Nathan had no answers, only comfort and unwavering support. "I don't know, Amanda. I don't understand it either. But what they did says everything about them and nothing about you. You deserved better today." I fell asleep in his arms, emotionally drained but secure in the knowledge that while my birth family had failed me spectacularly, I had married into a family that would stand by me through anything. Our honeymoon passed in a blur of beachside walks, room service meals, and long conversations about the future. We deliberately avoided talking about my family's betrayal, focusing instead on our plans for the years ahead. But the pain lingered beneath the surface, a constant undercurrent to even our happiest moments. When we returned home, I had 37 missed calls from my parents and sister, all from international numbers, all received after they would have watched the video I was sent. I deleted them without listening to the messages. I wasn't ready to hear their voices, their excuses, their attempts to justify what they had done. Instead, I focused on settling into married life, on thank you notes to guests who had shown up for us, on building a routine with Nathan that felt like home. Eleanor called every other day to check on me, her concern genuine and motherly in a way that highlighted my own mother's failure. Take all the time you need, she advised when I admitted I hadn't returned my family's calls. What they did was a profound betrayal. You don't owe them an immediate response. 2 weeks after the wedding, as Nathan and I were unpacking the last of the wedding gifts, he brought up the question I had been avoiding. What do you want to do about your family when they get back? I folded a tablecloth carefully, buying time. I don't know. Part of me never wants to speak to them again. Part of me wants to scream at them until they understand what they did to me. Whatever you decide, Nathan said, I'll support you. But they need to know that actions have consequences. What they did wasn't a minor oversight. It was a deliberate choice to hurt you. I nodded, knowing he was right. My family had made their choice, prioritizing a vacation over one of the most important days of my life. Now I needed to make mine. 3 weeks after our wedding, Nathan and I had settled into a comfortable routine as newlyweds. The pain of my family's absence was still fresh, but I was learning to live with it, to compartmentalize it in a way that allowed me to function. My parents and sister were due back from Europe any day, according to the itinerary they'd inadvertently revealed in their video, but I still wasn't sure if I was ready to confront them. You should post some of our wedding photos, Nathan suggested one evening as we were sorting through the digital album our photographer had sent. They turned out beautifully. I scrolled through the images, Nathan and me exchanging vows, cutting the cake, sharing our first dance. And there were dozens of photos with his parents, Eleanor adjusting my veil, William walking me down the aisle, both of them embracing us during the reception. You're right, I said. People have been asking to see them. That night, I selected 20 of my favorite images and posted them on my social media accounts. I deliberately chose photos that highlighted the joy of the day, the love between Nathan and me, and the support of his family. The caption I wrote was carefully worded. 3 weeks ago, I married my best friend. Thank you to everyone who celebrated with us, especially my amazing in-laws Eleanor and William, who have welcomed me into their family with such love and generosity. Nathan, thank you for being my rock, my partner, and now my husband. I couldn't ask for a better family to begin this new chapter with. I didn't mention my own family's absence. I didn't need to. Their absence was visible in every photo, in the empty spaces where they should have been. I posted the album, then put my phone away, not expecting much response beyond the usual likes and congratulatory comments. I was wrong. By the next morning, my phone had exploded with notifications. 290 calls and messages in less than 12 hours. Friends, extended family, colleagues, even acquaintances I hadn't spoken to in years, all reaching out with variations of the same question. What happened with your family? Confused, I began reading through the messages. The story that emerged left me stunned. Apparently, while in Europe, my parents and sister had been telling everyone a completely different story about why they weren't at my wedding. According to them, I had deliberately scheduled the wedding while they were on a long-planned, prepaid European vacation. They claimed they had begged me to change the date, but I had stubbornly refused, insisting that they cancel their trip. When they couldn't get refunds, I had supposedly cut them out of the wedding entirely, refusing to let them participate in any way. They had painted themselves as victims of my bridezilla behavior, going so far as to post their own photos from Europe with captions like, making the best of a difficult situation, and family trip that wasn't supposed to coincide with an important event. The audacity was breathtaking. They had completely inverted reality, making themselves the wronged parties in a narrative entirely of their own creation. Have you seen what they're saying? Nathan asked, his voice tight with anger as he showed me his own phone, where friends had been messaging him about the situation. I can't believe this, I whispered, scrolling through message after message. They abandoned me on my wedding day, and now they're telling everyone it was my fault. One message in particular caught my eye, from my mother's sister. Aunt Catherine, Amanda, your mother told me you scheduled your wedding during their trip to punish them for not giving you enough money for the ceremony. Please call me. This doesn't sound like you at all. Another from my father's college roommate. Your dad seems heartbroken about missing your wedding. He said you refused to even video call them during the ceremony. Is everything okay between you all? And most painfully, from my grandmother. Darling, I'm so confused. Hazel told me you deliberately excluded the family from your wedding plans. This doesn't sound like my sweet granddaughter. Please call me when you can. My hands were shaking as I set down the phone. They're lying to everyone. They're making me look like the villain. Nathan wrapped an arm around my shoulders. Then tell the truth. Your wedding photos show William walking you down the aisle. They show my parents with you all day. How could that be true if you were excluding your family? He was right. My silence had created a vacuum that my family had filled with their fiction. It was time to set the record straight. I picked up my phone and added a comment to my wedding photo post. To address the questions many of you have been asking, my parents and sister chose to take a European vacation instead of attending my wedding. They informed me of this decision via a pre-recorded video delivered on my wedding day. The surprise they had been hinting at for months was that they would not be present. They used the money they had initially promised for the wedding to fund their trip. This was their choice, not mine. I'm deeply grateful to Nathan's parents for stepping in and providing the support my own family withheld. I attached a screenshot from their video, showing them in front of the Eiffel Tower on my wedding day, with the date clearly visible. Within minutes, my phone began ringing again. The first call was from my mother. Take down that post immediately, she demanded when I answered. You're making us look terrible. I'm telling the truth, I replied, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Something you should have tried. We had been planning that trip for months, Amanda. It was non-refundable. You were planning to miss my wedding for months and lied to my face about it. You let me believe you were planning a surprise for the wedding when you were actually planning to abandon me. Don't be so dramatic, my mother scoffed. It was just one day. You had Nathan and his family there. It was my wedding day, I said, my voice finally breaking. The most important day of my life so far, and you chose a vacation over being there for me. And then you lied to everyone about it. We never thought you'd publicly humiliate us like this, she said, her voice hard. Take down that post, Amanda. Family business should stay private. You made it public when you started telling lies about me to everyone we know. I'm not taking down the truth. I ended the call as she was still protesting. Within minutes, my father called. Then Hazel. I let both go to voicemail. Then the calls started coming from extended family and family friends, many apologizing for believing my parents' version of events. My Aunt Catherine was particularly upset. I should have known Susan was lying, she said, referring to my mother. She's always been jealous of your independence, Amanda. I'm so sorry I doubted you. My cousin Jessica called next. I just saw your post and the picture. I can't believe Aunt Susan and Uncle Robert would do that to you. And Hazel? I thought you two were close. By the end of the day, the tide of public opinion had turned decisively. My honest post, backed by photographic evidence, had exposed my family's lies. Their social media accounts went suddenly quiet as they faced the backlash from friends and family who now knew the truth. Eleanor called that evening to check on me. How are you holding up with all this? Better than I expected, I admitted. It feels good to have the truth out there. To not be carrying this secret anymore. You did nothing wrong, she assured me. They made their choices, and now they're facing the consequences. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. That night, as Nathan and I were getting ready for bed, he asked the question that had been hanging between us. Do you think you'll ever forgive them? I considered this as I brushed my hair, looking at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed different somehow, stronger, more defined. I don't know, I answered honestly. What they did was cruel. And then to lie about it. To try to make me the villain. I don't know if our relationship can recover from that. Nathan nodded, understanding. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. Whether that means cutting them off completely or finding a way to rebuild with boundaries. As I climbed into bed beside him, I felt a strange sense of peace. The pain was still there. But alongside it was something new, a certainty that I had done nothing wrong, and a growing belief that I deserved better than what my birth family had offered me. My phone pinged with a text from Hazel. "We need to talk. This has gotten out of hand." I turned off my phone without responding and curled into Nathan's embrace. My sister was right about one thing: things had gotten out of hand. But the ones who had lost control of the situation were them, not me. For perhaps the first time in my life, I felt completely justified in putting my own emotional well-being first. The truth was out, and I was no longer willing to carry the burden of their betrayal in silence. 6 months after my wedding day, the seasons had changed from summer to winter, and my life had transformed in ways I never could have anticipated. The initial shock and raw pain of my family's betrayal had mellowed into a more manageable ache, one that flared up on holidays and special occasions, but no longer dominated my daily thoughts. In the weeks following my social media post exposing the truth, my parents and sister had made numerous attempts to contact me. Their messages evolved from angry demands that I remove the post to defensive explanations of their actions, and finally to grudging acknowledgments that perhaps they had made a mistake. "We never meant to hurt you," my mother said in one voicemail. "We just thought you would understand. You've always been so independent, so capable of handling things on your own. We didn't think you needed us there." This explanation only highlighted how fundamentally they had misunderstood what a wedding meant to me. It wasn't about needing practical help on the day, it was about sharing a milestone moment with the people who were supposed to love me most in the world. After 2 months of limited contact, I agreed to meet them for coffee at a neutral location. Nathan offered to come with me, but I decided this was a conversation I needed to have alone. They arrived looking uncomfortable, all 3 of them fidgeting with their coffee cups as I sat down across from them. "We're sorry," my father began. "We made a terrible mistake." "It wasn't a mistake," I corrected him quietly. "A mistake is forgetting to call. A mistake is being late to an appointment. What you did was a deliberate choice made over months of planning and lies." "We got carried away with the trip planning," my mother said. "It started as just an idea, but then we found these amazing deals, and it snowballed from there. And none of you, at any point, thought to say, 'Wait, this is Amanda's wedding day. Maybe we should be there instead of in Paris.'" They exchanged glances. The same secretive looks they had shared when discussing the surprise during wedding planning. "We thought you'd be fine," Hazel said finally. "You've always been the strong one. The one who has everything together. You had Nathan and his family. We didn't think you'd fall apart without us." "I didn't fall apart," I said, my voice steady. "I got married surrounded by people who cared enough to show up. What hurts isn't that I couldn't handle my wedding day without you, it's that you didn't think being there was important." "We do think you're important," my mother insisted. "We love you." "Love is shown through actions," I replied. "And your actions told me that a vacation was more important than witnessing one of the most significant moments of my life." The conversation continued in circles, with them attempting to minimize what they had done and me refusing to accept their hollow explanations. In the end, we reached an uneasy truce. I wasn't ready to forgive them, but I was willing to maintain limited contact while I processed my feelings. As the months passed, I found unexpected support from sources I hadn't fully appreciated before. Eleanor and William became true parental figures, checking in regularly and including Nathan and me in their family traditions. My relationship with them deepened in a way that highlighted what healthy family dynamics could look like. "Family isn't just about blood," Eleanor told me during Thanksgiving dinner at their home. "It's about showing up, about being present in the important moments and the ordinary ones." Extended family members reached out as well. My grandmother, initially confused by the conflicting stories, became one of my strongest advocates after seeing the evidence of what had happened. "Your mother has always been selfish," she admitted during one of our phone calls. "I had hoped she would be different with her children, but some people never change. You deserved better, my dear." Therapy became an essential part of my healing process. With my therapist's guidance, I began to recognize patterns in my family relationships that had been present long before the wedding debacle. I had always been the responsible one, the one who accommodated everyone else's needs while minimizing my own. "Your family took advantage of your giving nature," my therapist observed. They expected you to understand and forgive their absence because you've always understood and forgiven their emotional neglect in smaller ways. This insight was painful but liberating. It allowed me to see that what happened at my wedding wasn't an isolated incident, but the most extreme manifestation of a dynamic that had existed for years. As Christmas approached, my parents extended an invitation to their traditional holiday gathering. After much consideration and discussion with Nathan, I decided to attend, but with clear boundaries in place. "We'll come for dinner on Christmas Eve," I told my mother on the phone. "But we'll be spending Christmas Day with Nathan's family. But we always do Christmas morning together." She protested. "It's our tradition." "Traditions change," I said simply. "This is what works for us this year." The Christmas Eve dinner was tense but civil. My parents and sister made visible efforts to engage with Nathan and avoid contentious topics. I maintained a polite distance, participating in conversations but not sharing anything deeply personal. It wasn't warm or particularly enjoyable. But it was a step toward a new kind of relationship, one where I no longer expected emotional fulfillment from people who had proven themselves incapable of providing it. Christmas Day with Nathan's family was the stark opposite: warm, inclusive, and genuinely joyful. Eleanor had prepared stockings for everyone, including a special one for me with a hand-embroidered A at the top. "I started working on this the day after your wedding," she confided as I admired the intricate stitching. "I wanted you to know that you're truly part of our family now." That simple act of thoughtfulness brought tears to my eyes. This was what family should feel like: not perfect, not without disagreements or differences, but fundamentally safe and accepting. As winter turned to spring, I continued to build my life on my own terms. I maintained limited contact with my birth family, setting clear boundaries about what I was and wasn't willing to discuss or participate in. Sometimes they respected these boundaries. Sometimes they pushed against them, necessitating gentle but firm reminders. "I understand you're disappointed that we won't be joining you for the Memorial Day weekend at the lake house," I told my mother during one such conversation. "But Nathan and I have already made other plans." "You never want to do family things anymore," she complained. "I'm creating balance," I corrected her. "I'm making choices based on what feels healthy and positive for me, not just on what's expected or traditional." By the time our first wedding anniversary approached, I had reached a place of relative peace. The hurt hadn't disappeared entirely, I doubted it ever would, but it no longer defined me or my relationships. I had learned valuable, if painful, lessons about who I could truly count on and what genuine family support looked like. Nathan and I celebrated our anniversary with a small dinner party. Surrounded by the people who had stood by us through the past year, his parents, Stephanie and her husband, and a few close friends who had become like family. Notably absent were my parents and sister, who had been invited but declined to attend, citing a prior commitment. As we raised our glasses in a toast to the year ahead, I looked around at the faces of people who had chosen to be present in our lives, who had shown up when it mattered most. I thought about how different my understanding of family had become since that devastating wedding day discovery. Family, I had learned, wasn't defined by blood or obligation. It was built through consistent acts of love and respect, through showing up in both the celebratory moments and the difficult ones. It was created through choices, the choice to prioritize relationships, to offer support without expectation, to be honest even when truth was uncomfortable. My birth family had made their choice on my wedding day, and I had made mine in the months that followed, the choice to value myself enough to expect better, to surround myself with people who demonstrated their love through actions rather than empty words. It wasn't the family story I had expected to live, but it was mine now, with all its painful lessons and unexpected gifts. And as I looked at Nathan across the table, at the life we were building together, I found myself oddly grateful for the harsh truth my wedding day had revealed. Without that painful awakening, I might have spent years trying to earn the genuine support that some people simply weren't capable of giving. Sometimes the family we choose proves more faithful than the family we're born into. And sometimes the most valuable gift we can give ourselves is the courage to recognize the difference. Have you ever had to create boundaries with family members who let you down? What helped you move forward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to create your own definition of family. Thank you for being part of my journey. And I wish you all the strength to build relationships that truly nurture your spirit.